So, welcome to lesson 10 of Intro to Web Development. So this is the last lesson of this class. So I actually have to apologize because I think originally I said that we would cover like libraries and like Bootstrap and jQuery, but I think we didn't get to that in this 10 lesson course because of time constraints. So I apologize for that. We didn't get to everything that I wanted to get to, but I think maybe I'll like create another web development course that's going to be a continuation of this course, and then that'll contain a lot of other stuff. So anyway, so lesson 10, today we're just going to be covering some basic intro to manipulating the HTML DOM using JavaScript. If you remember last lesson, we learned about creating objects and functions, constructor functions, and then the DOM, right? So in this picture here, we have an example from last class. Here we're creating, this is a constructor function, and we're creating a hotel object type that has these attributes and these methods. And we also, at the end of last class, we covered the HTML DOM, so document object model. Basically, if you remember all the elements and stuff in HTML, we can separate them into a DOM tree with several nodes, elements, the text and attributes. And remember, we can access this stuff using JavaScript. Before we start, so in REPL.it, we're going to be doing a little bit of that today. Just make sure you have this line, which is in all, I think it's this one. Sorry, wrong REPL. It's this one. Wait, actually, I don't think it's this REPL, it's the other one. Actually, yeah, I'm just gonna open both of them so I can see it. Okay, yeah, it's this REPL. So if you recall from like a few lessons ago, we were doing stuff on an example website, right? So one thing you'll notice is that we have all the coding here, but I think most of you guys probably have this line of code up here at the start of the body, right? So we're going to be doing a little bit of this website, of the example website today. So make sure you move that line of code to the end of the body part, inside the body closing element, but still at the end of everything else. And that'll prevent some errors that could happen when we're doing the JavaScript. So first of all, let's talk about finding elements in HTML in the DOM. So there's several ways we can target elements, just like in CSS, right? You can assign elements different classes or different IDs, and same with JavaScript. You can target elements by their different IDs or classes or the tag name, right? So before we go to this example website here, I'm going to, I think, is this a blank one? Okay, so yeah, so this is a blank. Maybe get rid of all this. So we have a blank sheet here with the JavaScript file, right? So, so we're manipulating the DOM. First thing we have to do, right, is find the element that we want to manipulate, right? So in this case, I'll just put an example, right? And a p element ID equals text. And then I'll just, right, a click here, right? P. So we have, now we have p text here with some text in here, right? So, and we've given it an ID. So we've targeted that element in here, or we have the element in our HTML file. Now we target it. So how do we target? We can identify it through its ID, right? So how we do that is we create an object of that type of the node. So we can do, remember in JavaScript, we can create an object or an object instance of the object using the var keyword, and I'll just name it x equals document dot get element by ID. And then in the parentheses here, we have the ID name of whatever element we want to get. So in this case, the ID is text. So we just put text in there. And then basically what that does is that just assigns x to this object here, which is, remember, nodes are objects, right? So this is the element object of this element specifically here. So we've done that. You can also do it like in these other examples. You can also get elements by class name if you've assigned them a class, or by tag name. And it's a similar syntax. It's just different methods that we use here. So a little bit sidestep here. So some terminology we use when referring to the DOM is you can, so there's elements, right? And they're all part of like a family tree kind of. So the one that's relatively upper to the other elements is going to be called the parent, right? And this is a parent of these two elements, and this is a parent of that, blah, blah, blah. But relatively speaking, this is higher up than all these other elements below it. So this is going to be referred to as a parent. And then the ones that branch off from the bottom of the parent are going to be called children, right? So these are children, these are children, these are all children of this, these are children of this parent. And then the children of the same parent are called siblings, which makes sense. Yeah, so relatively speaking, that's what we're going to refer them to. So using JavaScript, you can target the children elements too. So let's say in this example here, in the HTML, we have a div element that encloses two paragraphs elements. And first, we target the main element, the element with the ID called main. And then, so we've assigned that to the X object, right? So now it's an object. And then we can target the stuff inside by doing targeting the stuff inside with dot. So we're using this method on everything in here. And then basically we're targeting by tag name, right? So all the tags with P that are inside of the this element are targeted. So that's just a little note there. We're not going to be using that much, but that's how you can do that. Next, let's talk about how you can change the content of the HTML using JavaScript, right? So the simplest one is document.write, right? So that's literally like we write something like document.write hello into the thing, right? That just adds that little bit of text right there whenever it runs. So that's like the simplest thing. We can also change the content of HTML, of the whatever HTML element we're referring to. So in this case, get rid of that. We have the object X is basically, it just represents this element, right? So what if we wanted to change this stuff inside? We can use the inner HTML attribute of that object to target it, right? So in this case, we're going to dot X to the attribute name to refer to it. And then we can change it to hello. And now, instead of being originally, it was click here, right? But then it, when the browser runs the code, it reaches the JavaScript, this line, and then it refers to the JavaScript file here, which then tells it, okay, we're gonna assign this object X to represent that element, and then now we're gonna change the content, the text content of that element to the word hello. So then after that, it just displays hello instead of what we had before, because this comes after. So that's how you change like the text for something. You can also change the value of an attribute in HTML, right? If you remember a few lessons ago, we were talking about HTML, right? And in some HTML elements, we have to have some attributes. For example, in IMG element, we have to have the src attribute or the href attribute for links. So you can change the value of an HTML attribute similarly, in a similar way to using the inner HTML, which is you can do document.getElementById first. That basically gets us the element that we want to target, and then you dot it to whatever attribute name you want here, and then you use an equal sign and assign that attribute a new value. So if you'll notice something here though, in this first picture here, we have document.getElementById here assigned to a variable X. Now these other two pictures, they don't have them. Basically, if you do this, you create an object, a reference object in JavaScript that you can like use again. Like you can also do X dot, I don't know, title, that's an attribute, and then assign it a different attribute. Or if you just want to adjust or change the content one time, another way you can do it is very simple. Get rid of this, put a dot there. That does the same thing, except it doesn't save that reference as an object in JavaScript. So you can't reuse that. But in this case, if we assign it to an object, we can reuse it and we can do different stuff to it. So those are different ways you can change it. You can also change CSS, the CSS of something, x dot style dot whatever property, and then you can give it like a new color. So that's how you change the CSS of an element. And then so that's how you change the content of something. What if you wanted to change based on an event, right? Because you don't want to just like write it here and then write what you actually want to input in the JavaScript, right? That would be stupid, because like, why would you do that? That's just repetitive. You want it to change based on an event, right? And remember, Events are basically when something happens. And so I have a short list of some events that you can have in a web page. For example, on click, that's when you click that element on the web page. Maybe it'll do something. On mouse over, on mouse out, basically when you hover and then when you move the mouse away. And there's a lot of other events that you can find, like there's probably a full list online, but for today, we'll just use these two because they're most common. So how do you change, how do you assign one of these events to an element, right? And we'll just use the on-click element event as an example. So in our HTML here, one way you can assign an event to an element is you can just add it as an attribute of inside the HTML tag, right? So in this case, we're just using the on-click event here. And then that'll link to a method in the JavaScript code that does something. Or for example, in our example here, if we get rid of this, let's say on click equals, you can do something like symbol like alert hi here, and then if you hold up. Wait. Yeah, so you can assign the event handler to in the HTML directly itself, and then you can make it do something in here. And in this case, it's just adding an alert after you click it. That's an example of, like, we call it inline events, right? So let me get rid of that. We can also have events written into the JavaScript directly. So before, we were adding an event handler directly to the HTML itself, inside the HTML tag. Which, I mean, you could do that if you only have like one or two events that you want to have put in. But what if you had multiple, or what if you wanted to have different events trigger different things, or basically, if you want to have all your JavaScript inside the JavaScript file instead of having to write JavaScript inside the HTML file, you can use the add event listener method in JavaScript, in the JavaScript file. So and basically, this is a built-in method for element objects that we can use. So this is the basic syntax here. So first, we have the element object. Most of the time, we're just going to be directly using document.getElementById. That'll basically refer this method to that element object. Or we can do this line first, do like var x equals this, and then do x dot add event listener. So, and then in the method, you'll notice we have three parameters. First parameter is the event, right? So what event do you want to be triggered? So remember here, we have all these different events. And notice something here, all the events, it says on change, on click, on mouse over, on mouse out. There's always the word on in front of the event. If we're using the add event listener method, you get rid of the on for the event if it has an on in front of it. So if it was on click, we would just do click. On change, it would just be change. And then the next parameter we have is the function that we want to trigger. So in this case, we'll have to write a function that'll do whatever we want separately in a different part of the JavaScript file. And then we'll refer to that function in this method here, right? So, and notice something. In this example here, for the method call, usually we include parentheses in the method call. In this case, we don't want to include parentheses in the method call. And then finally, we have this use capture parameter. We're not going to cover that this class. That's a little bit more advanced. So actually what you can do is you can just omit that part. You can just put the parentheses right there. You don't need to do that part. And so let me type this example into one of the REPLs that we had before, right? So in this case, we have this site, and then we have this button here that takes us to an external site, takes us to the humanesociety.org site. So a lot of times websites will have, like, when a button is taking you to an external site that's not affiliated with the site itself, it'll give you a warning, right? It'll give you a warning. In that case, let's say we wanted to do that. We can have an alert window pop up whenever somebody clicks on this. So first thing we have to do is we have to create an object reference to this element here. This is the button element. Notice that the ID is called learn more in my case. So let's say we wanted to target this. We could do var x equals document dot get element by ID. And then we have the ID name here, learn more. So now what we've done in this line is, like before, we've created X, a JavaScript object called X, which is a reference to the element here. And this method, remember, gets the element from the HTML page and assigns that object, element object, to the object X, which refers to that element. Now, let's say we wanted to add an event listener, right? So we can do add x dot add event listener. Did I spell it right? Okay. And then inside the parameters, first thing we have to do is give it an event, right? So in this case, the event is click. Then we assign a function. So let me create a function here, right? Function is, we'll call it alert pop up. And then we can just write an alert pop up, which is warning, this link will problems caused by this site. And so that function, basically it adds an alert pop-up. And then so we can call the function here, alert pop-up. And then, wrong method there, right there. Add event listener there. And then basically this will call this function here. And then if you run it, you'll notice if you click it, before you get taken to that external site, it'll give you this alert warning pop-up. And then if you click OK, it'll go there. Now, if you put the parentheses here, like normal, like usually we put parentheses when we call a method, it'll look at what it does. When you run it, it'll actually recognize that first, and then it'll give you that alert pop-up right there, which you don't want to do because you want it to be on the click. And then when you click on it, it won't give you that alert. So that's why we get rid of the parentheses for the function call so that it doesn't run first, so that the browser doesn't recognize that function call and then run it first. Can I paste the code? Okay, I'll copy and paste the code in. Yeah, so another thing you can do is like, let's say add text. You can do, remember, we have the event on mouse over. So mouse over. Let's say you wanted to, every time your mouse hovered over this button, you wanted it to change or add some text, right? So what we can do is, right now there's no text there, but we can make it so that it adds text afterwards, right? So after the button, or wherever we want the text to be, we can add an empty element, let's say P, and then give it an ID equals add text. And then we can make it empty. So right now when we run it, nothing's there. Oh, there's an error there. So right now there's nothing in there. It's empty. It doesn't show anything. And then in our JavaScript file here, after we've added an event listener, which is mouse over, and then we call the function add text. And then in the function, we can make it so that there's added text. Document get element by ID add text. And then we can make it add text dot inner HTML equals plus equals. And then you can add any text you want. Like, just for an example, I'm going to do hi, and then if you, whoops, wait. Wait, hold on. Hold on. Oh, hold on. I might. Wait. Okay, so I guess that example doesn't work. I don't know where I had a typo. Okay, so I'm not really sure where I had a typo there, but yeah, so that clearly that example doesn't work. But that just shows like there's different like things that you can do with JavaScript when you're editing the DOM. Yeah, so Wait, hold up. Strings. Okay, okay, yeah, that's where my error was. I forgot the quotes. I mean, I forgot that mouse over the O should be lowercase for the events. Um, yeah, so little typo. It should have been lowercase o, but this is like as an example. Um, you don't need to do this. It's like useless, but like as an example of what you can do, basically in this case, every time your mouse hovers over the button, it'll like add an extra text there, or you can make it like br, and then every time it'll add another line right there. Um, but yeah, so it's useless, but like if you wanted to make it so that and I don't have any good example of this, but if you wanted to make it so that something after something happened, you added some text there, um, like um, you could do that with DOM. Click it. I don't know. It's like a really stupid example, but you get the point. You can like uh, edit the HTML DOM. Yeah, so that's how you add an event listener to the JavaScript after you refer to an HTML element. So I think that's the end of this lesson. Thanks for attending the lessons. If you have any more questions, just email me and then I'll get back to you as fast as I can. And then I'll probably also add a part 2 to cover the stuff that we didn't cover. So stay tuned for that. The final code okay, I'll post the final code into the Google Classroom. Yeah. By the way, if you're doing web development, don't ever do this. This is like really stupid. Why would you do that? But if you had something where after you click it, it'll like post a text there, you can do that. But yeah, so that's the end of this class. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah, anyway, if you have any questions about anything, you can just email me. Oh, I'll post the code. Actually, I'll just post the REPL link into the Google Classroom. Yeah, I'll post that after the meeting's done. Bye. Yeah, this is the last class, but there will probably be like a continuation of this class, like part 2 or something, where we cover jQuery and Bootstrap.